Imagine a little child sitting alone in their room, feeling the heavy, unspoken weight of a house that lacks warmth. That child learns early on that the world is unpredictable, packing away an invisible backpack full of confusion and longing. Years later, when life gets too heavy, that grown-up child reaches for something, anything, to dull the noise. Most of society looks at this and calls it a weakness, a bad habit, or a moral failing. But what if addiction isn't the problem at all? What if it is actually an attempted solution to unhealed pain? Today, we are unpacking the hidden link between childhood trauma and adult addiction. Because addiction is rarely about chasing pleasure. At its core, it is about escaping pain. To truly understand this, we first need to redefine what trauma actually is. Trauma is not always a dramatic, violent event. Sometimes trauma is simply what did not happen. The reassurance you never heard, the hug you never received, the emotional safety that was missing when you needed it the most. When a child grows up without that safety, their nervous system slowly learns to live in a constant state of threat. Their body becomes hyper-alert. Their mind is always preparing for something to go wrong. And this is where the biology becomes fascinating. When a child experiences ongoing stress or emotional neglect, their body releases large amounts of cortisol, the main stress hormone. If this stress continues for years, it begins to change the way the brain develops. The brain's reward system, especially the dopamine pathways, becomes altered. Dopamine is the chemical that creates motivation and pleasure. It tells the brain, "This feels good, do it again." But in a brain shaped by early trauma, that system becomes fragile. Ordinary experiences that normally bring joy, like friendships, hobbies, or small achievements, do not create the same emotional reward they do in other people. Life can begin to feel strangely flat. And then one day that person discovers something powerful. Maybe it is alcohol. Maybe it is drugs. Maybe it is gambling, pornography, binge eating, or endless scrolling through a phone. Suddenly the brain lights up. For the first time in a long time, there is relief, there is quiet. There is a temporary escape from the emptiness. To the brain, this feels like a miracle. And that is the moment addiction quietly begins. Because the human brain has one primary mission: protect you from pain. To the nervous system, emotional pain can feel just as threatening as physical danger. So when something appears that numbs that pain quickly, the brain grabs onto it with everything it has. At first, the substance or behavior genuinely helps. It silences the inner voices that whisper things like, "I'm not good enough," or "I'm broken," or "nobody truly cares." But the relief is temporary, the pain eventually returns. And when it does, the brain remembers the fastest way it found to escape. So the cycle repeats. Over time, the brain begins to rely on this escape. What started as a survival strategy slowly becomes a dependency. Not because the person is weak, but because their nervous system learned that this was the only reliable way to regulate overwhelming emotions. This is why the way we talk about addiction matters so much. For decades, society has treated addiction as a moral failure or a lack of discipline. But modern psychology and neuroscience are revealing something very different. Addiction is often an adaptation. It is the brain's attempt to survive pain that was never properly processed or healed. So instead of asking, "What is wrong with you?" a more compassionate and accurate question is, "What happened to you?" That single shift in perspective changes everything. It moves us away from shame and toward understanding. And shame, ironically, is one of the strongest fuels for addiction. When people feel deeply ashamed of their coping mechanisms, they often isolate themselves. And isolation is exactly the environment where addiction grows stronger. But here is where the story becomes hopeful. If early trauma can shape the brain, does that mean we are permanently trapped by our past? Thankfully, the answer is no. The brain is not a rigid machine. It is incredibly adaptable. Scientists call this ability neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity means the brain is constantly reshaping itself based on new experiences. The same brain that once adapted to survive pain can also adapt to experience healing. What was wired through trauma can slowly be rewired through safety. And that safety usually comes through connection. Human beings are not designed to heal alone. Our nervous systems calm down in the presence of safe, compassionate relationships. When someone listens without judgment, something powerful happens inside the brain. The stress response begins to settle. Cortisol levels drop. The nervous system slowly realizes it is no longer in constant danger. Over time, this allows those fragile dopamine pathways to begin functioning normally again, and something beautiful starts to return. Simple joys, a genuine laugh with a friend, a quiet moment of peace, a sense of purpose. These moments may seem small, but they are signs that the brain is recovering its natural balance. Healing does not usually happen overnight. It happens gradually, through consistent experiences of safety, understanding, and compassion. Sometimes that comes through therapy, sometimes through supportive friendships, sometimes through learning to treat yourself with the kindness you never received as a child. Every moment of self-compassion is a small act of rewiring the brain. Every safe connection weakens the grip of addiction just a little bit more, and slowly the need to escape begins to lose its power. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, remember this. Addiction is often the language of pain. It is the nervous system trying to survive feelings it never learned how to process. But healing is possible. The human brain is remarkably resilient, and the human spirit has an incredible ability to rebuild itself, even after years of hardship. Your past may explain your pain, but it does not have to define your future. Those scars are not proof that you are broken. They are evidence that you endured something difficult and kept going. And with the right support, the right understanding, and the right environment, those scars can become guides that lead you toward a life that is calmer, healthier, and more meaningful than you ever thought possible. Because the human spirit was never meant to stay broken. It was meant to rise.